For more on the royal fortune and its future, let's bring in Klaus Larres. He's the Professor of History and International Affairs at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill. Thank you very much for your time. Now, the succession marks a transition period for the royal family assets. Explain what it includes and the process in which King Charles inherits it.
Well, the royal family has an awful lot of money, and the Queen's personal wealth was around about 350 million pounds, and her total assets, as you said in your report, are up to 19 billion. That is, of course, an awful lot of money. However, one has to say that many of her assets, like Buckingham Palace, for example, could not be sold on the market. So these are not assets she can use freely. She is clearly constrained by tradition, by the law of the land, and what the government allows her to do. Still, she has income from three main sources. That is a crown estate, which comes back to the Queen via a sovereign grant from the government, which is something like 86 million pounds a year at the moment. Then she gets money from income from the judges of Lancaster and Cornwall. That's also something like almost 50 million pounds. And then she has private property, like, for example, the Palace of Balmoral in Scotland, where she died, and also Sandringham Castle in Norfolk, where the royal family usually spends Christmas. So all that money, of course, comes to her eventually, and she pays it out to her children, to her household. She finances her travel or from that money, but it is, of course, an awful lot of money, and the British public rightly asks whether it is justified that the royal family is so wealthy and so rich while the country is in a deep economic crisis.
Well, that's a very good point. Many Britons have questioned whether the financial arrangement of royal assets and the profits reaped from them ultimately benefits Britain, especially as it faces economic difficulty amid high inflation. Then, of course, there's the fact that the king doesn't have to pay inheritance tax. So what do you think is the public opinion, the broad public opinion, on the way the royal finances actually help Britons themselves?
This is right, actually. The Queen doesn't pay inheritance tax, but she has voluntarily agreed to pay council tax and income tax. And she doesn't need to, but she has agreed to do that. But still, you know, it's an awful lot of income. And whether the balance sheet is positive or negative is very difficult to judge. Clearly, the Queen and hopefully the new king has been a rock of stability for the British state. The British state since 1945 has undergone many traumatic crises. The decline from superpower to European regional power. And only recently with Brexit, we had another profound crisis in Britain. And the Queen was really a rock of stability. She held the nation together. She made sure that Scotland wouldn't go, that Northern Ireland wouldn't go, not, you know, politically, but simply by being there. She was a link of stability. And of course, one doesn't know whether Charles will be able to perform the same role, but of course people in Britain hope so. Also, there is tourism. A lot of people come to Britain to see Buckingham Palace and other royal assets, and whether that is a positive for the country or whether the country actually, by maintaining these palaces, loses money, this is very difficult to judge. Still, Charles, I think, will slim down the monarchy. He will have fewer working royals, as they are called. Like in Norway, for example, we have 4 working royals. In Britain, we have 12, and there are actually some more on top of that, and he wants to bring that down and therefore save costs. He also wants to modernize the monarchy. We know that the Queen was very much appreciated, very much loved by the nation, but she was also very formal, very aloof. She, for example, went out in public and never shook hands with any man. She didn't want to be touched by the ordinary people in public. And Charles, only a couple of days ago, he did mingle with the population of London, shook hands freely. So that indicates he really wants to modernize the monarchy, and I would assume that also financially he wants to bring it more into tune with the sentiments of the British people.
And perhaps the sentiments of his own ideas around environment and planning. That seems to be a very strong focus for him as a royal. How do you think he'll bring in some of those social political issues through his reign?
His role as prince was, of course, different from his new role as king. As prince, he really actively supported environmental causes, social causes. He established the Prince's Trust, which did a lot of good in terms of these issues. He brought climate change perhaps to the attention of the British public decades before it actually was so well known as we now know it. And as king, he will not be able to push it in the same direct way. He will not be able to publish books and articles about it and be so outspoken in interviews about it. However, he has now, of course, more influence. So behind the scenes, he could push into the same direction, but more indirectly, and make his influence and the influence of the monarchy felt in favor of environmentalism and climate change causes. And of course also social causes. And I think I would expect that he will do that, but it will be more behind the scenes rather than directly and bluntly as he used to do as Prince of Wales.
Klaus, thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it. Klaus Larres there, Professor of History and International Affairs at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill.